So first, I'm a little distracted by Radhe's beauty. All of us women there were sitting and looking at Radhe and saying, "My God, how beautiful! How beautiful!" I can see, Sandeep, you have excellent taste. So thank you so much for coming here. And this is the last session of the day. So we thought we'd just end on a note of, you know, asking you to do a lot, but to just end on a high note, to give us some solace and to also give us a sense of joy, which is what education is all about. And what art is all about. So, no pressure.
Yeah, clearly.
But perhaps you can start with your story first, Sandeep, because I find it quite fascinating. One of three boys growing up in Los Angeles, becoming a Carnatic singer. Quite
Yeah.
interesting. In the age of rap and rock and roll.
Yeah, definitely. As you said, one of three boys, and so very musical family. My brothers learned music. My mother's a music teacher. She was my first music teacher in Los Angeles and even has a music school there in Cerritos, California called Sampradaya School of Music. My father was organizing concerts for artists coming from India from the 80s onward. So it was a very musical household, and I was the youngest. I am the youngest in the family. So I would see my brothers having their music classes. I would hear my mother teaching her music classes. We would have musicians staying with us, coming from Chennai all the way to the US on their tours. So I literally grew up in a very musical house, even though I was in the US, even though I was in Los Angeles. So at the age of about 4 or 4.5, I started actually learning music in a more formal way, because till then I kept hearing the classes and just started humming along and singing along with my mom's students. So then my parents thought, oh, okay, he's got some sort of interest in this. And
that's not true. He used to correct the students in the class. Even though he had not learned any music, he would complain to his mother that the other students were singing it wrong.
I was trying to tell the cleaner, nicer version, modest version, I guess. Yeah, stuff like that. Basically, I definitely had a strong interest, and I was taking to Carnatic music in a very, very strong way.
Do you remember the earliest song your mum sang to you?
I
What did your mum sing?
There's a Geetam. There's a Geetam that I had never learned, and my mother was teaching it, and I apparently would walk around the house and sing it. And my dad came home from work one day and said, how does he know that? Did you teach it to him? And I was like 3 or 4. That is Mandara Dara Re Moksha Murare. It's a very small Geetam that you learn as a beginner. And she said he's not ever sat in the class. He just keeps coming in and out of the room when I'm teaching the other students, or sometimes comes and sits, and I would sit in her lap. And that was it. And I just picked it up. It was somewhere, it was just kind of soaking into my brain. So that's when my parents said, okay, we should teach him. And I started learning music from my mother. But I was also a typical kid, and after a few years of learning from my mom, I also started to misbehave and be mischievous and say, I don't want to come for class, I want to go out and play. And it was kind of like when they don't ask you to come for class, I keep learning these things just by hearing. The moment they wanted me to actually come for class, then I was kind of a little bit, in the beginning it was okay, but they tell me later on I would not sit down. And so when I was 11, they saw there's some potential, but they also saw that I would refuse to sit down and learn from my mother. So my parents thought, okay, we've got to find him another teacher. Somebody maybe a little more advanced, somebody who he'll sit down and listen to and obey the instructions and go for class when there's class. We kind of went through so many options, and my parents had this, at that time, very different revolutionary idea of let's send this kid to India. So at the age of 11, I took 1 year off of school. I didn't go to school. I moved to Chennai with my mother, Madras as it was. And I just learned from one of the masters, Calcutta K.S. Krishnamurti, who was at that time one of the most senior legendary teachers and vidwans. I learned from him for about 3 years until he passed away. But that 1.5 years that I was in India at the age of 11, all I did was I learned music. I would come home and I'd practice. Almost every evening, my mom would take me to a concert somewhere around that area in Mylapore. And so I completely immersed myself, even as a child, in that environment.
That's
that
not
changed
when
a
you
lot for
met
me.
Radhe.
Sorry?
That's not when you met Radhe.
No. That comes way later in the story. So that kind of, it was such a crucial moment for me though, that 1 year, because
But,
I
what
became
a
very serious.
leap of faith your parents took in
Absolutely.
sending you and
Yeah.
your mom accompanying you. What did your brothers think? What were they up to?
My oldest brother by that point was in university, and so he was off doing his own thing. The middle brother was in high school. He thought it was a little crazy, but okay, fine, and let it happen. And he's like, okay, cool. But definitely, my parents were little wild thinking at that time. Now it's so much more common to relocate for 6 months or a year. At almost any age, people take their children or students in high school or college relocate for a year or two. At that time, this is 1996, I think, it was really something different, and it probably changed the course of my life. That move to India for that 1 year from there probably changed, because I got very serious about my focus on music, and I would visit India every year, at least in the summer holidays, 2 months. And then I started coming in December for the Margari music season for 2 weeks during that holiday, and started singing more concerts. And I was in college, and at that time I was learning from Sri Sanjay Subramaniam sir, and he said, "What are you studying over there? Just like, why are you even going back? Cancel your return ticket and just learn music." And he would say that to me, and he was 75% serious, 25% joking, but actually 75% serious. And so he kind of planted that idea. So from there, I finished my degree, of course, because my dad wouldn't let me just stop halfway. My parents were very certain that I should have a degree to fall back on. And then from
What
there,
is
I
your
moved.
degree?
Something which completely doesn't matter to my life now. I have a bachelor's of the arts in law and society.
Law and society.
I wanted to become a lawyer. I wanted to go to law school. So in the US, you have to study beyond a bachelor's in order to be a lawyer. And I had some grand ideas that I was going to be a lawyer. And my brother, at that time, my eldest brother was in law school. I think he started working, actually. He was a lawyer for some time in New York. And I thought it's so cool to live in New York and, be this lawyer in a big
Your
law
ideal
firm.
suits.
Yeah, exactly. And I told him this, and he just looked at me and he said, "No, don't do it. This isn't for you." Even for him, he was like, "I'm trying to get out of this. This is definitely not for you." So probably the combination of him telling me, "Just finish with your bachelor's," and my music teacher over here saying, "Just come to Chennai. What are you doing over there?" It all kind of worked in my brain, and I moved to Chennai after that, and I've been here ever since 2006. I've lived here in Chennai.
So, Radhe, you've had a pretty interesting education as well. I mean, Rishi Valley, Kala Kshetra. Talk a little about, and of course, you're the Jaggi Vasudev's daughter. But talk a little about your growing up years.
Um, I I've lived in a car most of my life. I think from the time when I was about 2 months or 3 months old, my father just strapped me in the front seat with a seat belt. And at that time, we were just building the work, and he was just starting to teach. No, he wasn't just starting to teach, but it was still a very young thing. So I traveled all over the country in the front seat of a car. My whole life essentially. And when I was about 4 and a half, I joined a boarding school in Ooty. That was possibly my most formal education for 4 years that I was there. And then I visited Rishi Valley because a family friend was applying to Rishi Valley, and I was just like, can I just stay here? I don't want to go back to my school. So the next year I joined Rishi Valley, and I was there for 7 years. Rishi Valley, that way, is a very alternative education. The focus is not so much on, we didn't have any examinations till we came to 9th grade. And despite that, I was still one of the more distracted students in an already open school. I started learning dance when I was 9, but I was not serious about it. It was just one extracurricular activity that I could take. In the 7 years that I was in Rishi Valley, I did 4 years of music, 4 years of percussion, and 4 years of dance. So you can imagine how not serious I was because I was just flipping from class to class depending on whether I had an agreeable situation with the teacher on that day. Um, I think what's been interesting about my upbringing has been more that nobody has ever treated me as a child. Nobody ever told me what to do. It was always I was presented with a situation, and then I had to make my decision and live with the consequences. Whatever those consequences were, I had to live with it. Um, And so from Rishi Valley, after 10th standard, I didn't want to go back to school. I'd kind of had enough of formal education. And I said, I'll do whatever exams I need to do. But I want to learn how to do something. And I was very interested in painting at that time. So we happened to visit Chennai. And somebody said, Kalakshetra is very beautiful. You must go and visit. So we visited Kalakshetra, and I met Leela Sampson. She was the director of the college at that time. She spoke so passionately about dance, not as a career, not as something that she was involved in, but just the beauty of the art form and all the various aspects of dance that were all melded together in this one little thing that you could do with your body. And I think we had maybe spoken to her about 15, 20 minutes, and I stepped out of the office and I was like, that. I don't know what it is, but I want to do that. So then I joined Kalakshetra at 16, and I was there for 4 years. It's a full college course. That was also my first rude shock into the more traditional way of teaching, which is just do it because I told you to do it. And seeing that I was never brought up that way, I asked all kinds of uncomfortable questions. And the only person actually who was very patient and who really kind of explained things to me and told me why things are done a certain way was Leela Akka. And that left a lasting impression on me. So after I finished in Kalakshetra, I was 20 years old. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So I did an arts management course because, you know, some education has to happen. And I wasn't dancing every day while I was studying there. And I just missed it so much. I couldn't understand why I was feeling, you know, my body was feeling a certain way or my mind was feeling a certain way. I just missed dancing. So then I kind of knew there was no turning back. It's only an unusual story because most dancers start very young and they become very passionate about it from a young age. But I came to it as an adult, and I think because of that, I look at it from a slightly different perspective. In that it's something that I had to, it's something I had to explore for myself.
And you chose.
And I chose. It's not just that I kind of was brought up, and nobody in my family has any kind of classical exposure. I didn't grow up listening to classical music or listening to classical dance. In fact, more than Sandeep, I think my upbringing was a lot more Western than anything anybody in America had had, because I was like a tomboy. I was in short shorts and loose t-shirts and climbing trees and climbing mountains, and I wasn't going to sit in a classroom and listen to what anybody had to say. If I had a book and I had a tree, I was good. I didn't need anybody else's company or anything. Um, but understanding at 21, 22 that, you know, kind of revisiting why I wanted to join Kalakshetra and the literature that's involved, the poetry that's involved, the culture that comes along with it, I made a conscious decision to make those things a part of my life. I think when people see me today also, people associate me a lot with a sari and a kumkum bindi and all. I didn't grow up like this at all. I definitely chose the aspects of the culture that I wanted that really meant something to me. And it's so much a part of who I am today. I think it's unbelievable. But having said that, my mother apparently visited Kalakshetra when my father and mother had gotten married. They just happened to be there, so they went to the beach and they went to Kalakshetra. And she had said, if I ever have a daughter, I would like to send her here. But I had no clue until I was graduating and my father told me the story. So I don't know, it feels like a big circle, but for me it was definitely an exploratory path.
So when did you actually start performing? While you were at in public? Were you while you were at Kalakshetra or?
No, just after. So when I was about 20, 21, I gave my first performance in Coimbatore and then another one in Chennai. And it's been on since then now, every so often.
And when did you two meet? And where? The edited version, the version that the world can hear.
We met in 2012. I mean, actually, we have met before that, but we just kind of in some program we saw each other and didn't really meet. But we actually met through some friends in 2012, and then we were just friends.
It's a very small world. Classical musicians and dancers, everybody knows everybody. If you haven't met somebody, you'll probably meet them in a
Yeah.
few days. And especially around December season, you kind of just meet and mingle with everybody in some sabha or in some canteen or over some coffee. So we had a lot of common friends and actually a lot of very close common friends, and we were surprised that we didn't know each other. And yeah, we met, and then within maybe a year and a half, I was like, I'm getting married. Either you can marry me or I'll marry somebody else, but I'm getting married.
Yeah, that's pretty much what she said.
Did the great Jaggi have anything to say to either of you?
Well, the first time Sadhguru found out about, he called me and asked me, who is this boy? I said, which boy? Because I wasn't quite sure if we were at that point where I was ready to make a serious commitment or what it was. But he said, bring him home. So I think a year after we met, Sandeep came home. He met Sadhguru.
Home being
Home being Coimbatore.
Coimbatore,
yeah,
Yes,
and the
yeah.
ashram.
At the ashram.
So
yes.
Sandeep found out what her home was like, which was like many acres of the ashram.
Yeah, I had gone once before for a music workshop to help with the music students there. But at that time, of course, I didn't meet Sadhguru, nothing like that. I had just gone as a musician and met the students. So I'd seen the place. But yes, seeing it this way when I went to meet Sadhguru was, of course, very different. Entering the ashram in that situation was very different. I think meeting him was fine. I grew up as a person or in a family that was not very spiritual. My parents are more religious, but I was kind of just a little bit of everything growing up in America, not too deep or passionate about anything except for my music. So I didn't actually know what Isha Foundation was, and I didn't know much about Sadhguru at that time, which maybe helped because I just kind of went in not knowing and feeling.
You weren't intimidated.
Yeah, I mean, not very intimidated, not any more than you would be meeting potential father-in-law, which anyway is scary enough, nervous enough. So a lot of people would ask me that. I said, well, at that time, I didn't really know much more beyond that he's Radhe's father. So of course, there's that nervousness and little intimidation, but that was okay. And he was, of course, quite nice and welcoming and just asked us to, what are your plans? And I think I just basically kind of told him more or less I don't know and sort of pushed it off, which I think people find quite surprising. But that was, I always sort of am genuine. I didn't want to sugarcoat it or anything, but that was the truth. At that time, especially, I had moved to India and I was not doing anything in my life except music. I was just, wake up, practice, go for class, go for some concert, practice again in the evening. I was practicing anywhere between 5 to 6 hours a day and go listen to a concert for 2 hours and go for class for 1 or 2 hours. And when that is your routine, I didn't have things like marriage and settling down and family, that sort of things, even in my mind on the horizon. So when Radhe came into my life, it was very different and kind of took a little time for me to then think about that next phase of life. But of course, but Sadhguru was quite supportive and he said he understood that and he said it's time to think about that though. So I think that's pretty much where it started. And then after that, within a few months, we decided, okay, let's get married.
I think what was more strange than meeting Sadhguru was all of my childhood friends and all the people that I have grown up with have all been mostly sannyasis and brahmacharis. And even today, I think I relate to them the best. And even when we're in the ashram, they are still like my closest. I mean, I have a lot of other friends in the ashram, but it's still the brahmacharis in the ashram who I'm closest to, the most comfortable with, the most relaxed with. I think that kind of maybe was more of a surprise for him than meeting Sadhguru, because Sadhguru is how he is with everybody. I don't think that makes much difference. But
did he tell you about the water and the soul of the water? And
Me?
yeah, did you understand?
The first day that I met him?
Yeah.
No,
What was the first day he told you?
Didn't get into it that day.
Okay, that was later.
Later on. No.
no, I think if you're not searching for something, he won't say anything.
He'll understand.
I mean, yeah, he's... I don't know. I don't want to say.
Do you sing to her, or did you ever sing to her?
Sing to her?
Yeah,
I
why
sing
not?
concerts all the time. She comes, yeah, it's all for her.
Sing a song that you would sing to her if you were serenading her.
Oh.
he has a fixed answer for that, because the very first time that we were put on the spot was the day we got married. While, like, just after the wedding ceremony, and there were a lot of people at the wedding, he said, "Why don't you sing? She'll dance." And he had no choice but to sing
A
on
bit
the
like I
spot.
told him, you sing, she'll dance.
Yeah, I can sing that song, or I can sing something else if you're gonna dance. Or is it just me?
We'll do that later.
Actually, first you sing. We have to put you on the spot.
Well, the song that I serenaded her, you could say, at our wedding was, yeah, it was, I'll sing a little bit of that now. நின்னையே ரதி என்று நினைக்கிறேனடி கண்ணம்மா நின்னையே ரதி என்று நினைக்கிறேனடி கண்ணம்மா தனையே சகி என்று சரணமெய்தினேன் கண்ணம்மா நின்னையே ரதி என்று நினைக்கிறேன் அடி கண்ணம்மா கண்ணம்மா.
Wonderful. So that sort of convinced you that you'd made the right choice.
It was already too late
too
by
late.
then.
Ceremony was done. So
No, but you know, the emotion that you put into the song, and I mean, when you're practicing, when you're sitting by yourself and you're practicing, how do you do that? Do you sort of just close your eyes and just think, or just remove all thought and just let the music flow through you? How does it work?
it took a long time to get to that point where now if I sing, I can close my eyes and I can pretty much enter into a different sort of zone. But the early years, and even after I moved to India and you're still learning a lot and performing and just trying to get that experience, you're thinking every minute, is this okay? What am I going to sing next? What am I singing? It takes a long time to get to that comfort level and understanding and your, what do you say? I don't want to say the word mastery, but at least some comfort over the art form. To get to that level where then you can completely immerse yourself and lose yourself in the ragam. So that does happen now. I don't know if it happens as much when I'm at home, because nowadays, in those days when I was literally practicing anywhere between 4, 5, 6 hours in a day, yes, sometimes you just get completely into it, you lose yourself, you're exploring so much. Now it's like I'm performing every third or fourth day. So when I'm at home practicing, a lot of times it's learning a new song or reviving an old song. So a lot of it is looking at the notes and trying to remember something. But then on the stage, very often I lose, I say, lose that sense of where I am and my surroundings. I just close my eyes and I can go into another zone and forget where, who's in front of me, how many people are in front of me. And I think those are the real moments of kind of almost similar to something like meditation in the music, because you're hitting something
Surrender, right?
completely. And almost because I've heard so many stories, obviously now being in Isha and speaking to so many brahmacharis and people who've had different experiences, sometimes when they describe some of their experiences, it's similar to what I can feel and what I've gone through singing sometimes. And it's not something that I've tried, oh, I want to have that experience. It's just something that I realize, oh, that's very similar to what happened to me in a concert, or happened to me that day singing here or there, or very emotional, touching experiences singing in certain venues or for certain groups of people, because you can feel that emotional connection with them, or even with your surroundings and the energy that's there.
You know, it's very interesting, Radhe, when you were talking about the brahmacharis being your friends. And I thought actually your lives are no different, because both of you have also sort of surrendered selves to the art, right? Each of you. So do you also often have this kind of experience where you're just transported as the audience is?
So the approach with dance is a little bit different in that we rehearse everything many, many times. So in music, a lot of it is extempore on stage. So how you go from one note to the other is entirely in your hands. Whereas in dance, you rehearse a lot more and your musicians need to be there with you. But if you are not 100% convinced of what you're doing, that is the first place where the audience will find you out. And then beyond that, if you're able to kind of you don't actually forget yourself, because you have to, there's a beat going and there's a certain choreography that's happening that you have to always be on thing. But what you can do, or few moments in which it has happened, is that that kind of works as a ladder. You have a choreography that's set, and on top of that you have the freedom to add layers on it. And most of our classical pieces, our traditional pieces, are very nuanced and multi-layered. And so you can make the choice in that moment to either look at it from a certain perspective and then delve deeper into that, or you can do one thing and then you can kind of switch the emotion over to show a contrasting side. And some of those choices are made on stage. Not all of it, but a lot of those are made on stage. So your hand gesture may be the same. You may be asking why in the same way, but who you're asking it to, what position you're asking them from, are you looking at them as your beloved, are you looking at it as the divine, are you looking at it as somebody you want to go back to, somebody you don't want to go back to, you can make those nuanced choices while you're on stage. Mostly, at least for me, I don't have much memory of my performances. In the sense, while it's happening, of course, I'm 100% there. But once it's done, I can't quite remember exactly what I did. Or, like if I'm talking and then I go back and I say, oh, I said this or I did this, and I can think about it. But when it's a performance.
Chance in a bit.
Sort of, yeah. I mean, in the sense, you're 100% there, and if you're not 100% there, then the audience is not there with you. So a part of it is, like he said, mastering the technique of it. And then once you have mastered the technique, to be able to rise above that, because art is not in how neat your hand gesture is or how clear your footsteps
That
are.
would just be
Art is, yeah, that would
technique.
just be technique.
Yeah.
Art is in that one step beyond that you're able to take, and also being able to take everybody in the audience along with you. Because otherwise I might as well just dance at home and just take myself wherever I want to go. But the whole thing is that when all of you are sitting here, that I'm able to take you along with me, go through the same emotions that I am going through, and be convinced of the perspective that I am taking. And so if I'm talking to Sri Krishna and I'm saying, how dare you do this? You may be a great Sri Krishna Bhakt, but in that moment you must be angry with him the same way that I am angry with him. Or you must be in love with him the same way that I am in love with him. Because only then there is that kind of ethereal quality to the art form. Because otherwise it's just hands and legs moving all over the place.
Do you want to show us what getting angry with Sri Krishna is like?
So, because you had mentioned it to us before, the piece that I had asked him to learn a few lines about is all of these sweet and beautiful words that you're saying, enough. I've heard them before. So then she goes on to praise him, and she says, you are, of course, at the end of the day, Padmanabha, lying down, in the ocean of milk and under a hooded snake. But enough of your trickery. I have heard enough words out of your mouth. And the thing about our art form is that you have this freedom with even the divine, to be friends with him, to speak to them with such intimacy that you may not even be able to speak to your spouse with. That you can tease them, you can be angry with them, you can be friends with them. All the minor fluctuations of the heart and mind, you can express to them 100%. And this is a freedom that I think we have mostly in Indian dance and music and poetry. That everything that I feel is ultimately for you, so I'll offer everything. I'll offer my anger, I'll offer my love, I'll offer my hate, I'll offer everything to you. Everything is in your feet. And whether you believe in a particular god or you don't believe in a particular god, that's not it. The point is that you have a certain intimacy with something that is larger than yourself. That you have a certain freedom with something larger than yourself. Um, it's a very it's a very private love affair that you do on a very public stage.
Sandeep must be, I would be jealous as her husband. I
Why?
mean, it sounds such a passionate affair.
But finally, I have to sing now. So.
So she needs you, right?
Mm.
So in this first she says enough, and then she says, please listen to my request. At the end, ultimately you want him to listen to you because otherwise it doesn't work.
సారమైన మాటలెంతో చాలు చాలు రాసామి మనవి వినరాసామి నిన్ను నమ్మియున్నా మరేని మనవి వినరాసామి నిన్ను నమ్మియున్నాను మరేని ఘనుడైన శేషునివై ఘనుడైన శేషునివై వెలయు శ్రీ పద్మనాభ ఘనుడైన శేషునివై వెలయు శ్రీ పద్మనాభ సారమైన మాటలతో చాలు చాలు సాని సారమైన మాటలెంతో చాలు చాలురా చాలు చాలురా చాలు చాలురా
That's really wonderful. I mean, it sort of transports you, doesn't it? And I mean, how does it affect you? I wonder. You see her as a performer, she's also your spouse, ditto with you. I mean, as artists, you're two different entities. And yet, is there an element of competition? Is there an element of.
Luckily, she's a dancer and I'm a singer, so there's no competition. If we were both singers or both dancers, that might be a different story.
I wonder how you dance, though. Have you tried to teach him something or no?
I don't make mistakes like that in my life.
She sings better than I dance. You can ask her to sing instead of asking me to dance.
No, but I wonder, as artists, is there any competition? Do you ever feel any sort of, or even just plain, I wish I could do that?
I mean, I wish I could sing like that, for sure. I used to sing when I was younger, and then I got married and I stopped singing. It's very difficult to sing with a musician like this in your house. But no, there's no competition for multiple reasons. One is he's been performing for a lot longer than I have, and he was much further in his career than I was when we met. And I think it's going to stay like that at least till we cross a certain point. But there's also no competition, I think, more because actually it's much easier to have an artist for a spouse when you're an artist, because the kind of schedules we have, if I had somebody who was at home all the time and I had to come back home all the time, then I wouldn't be able to just be away from home for months together and do what I have to do. And same for him. He also complains that I am his biggest critic, because a show will go really well and the entire audience will be fawning over him after the show is done and everybody wants pictures with him, and he'll come home and he'll be like, oh, it was so good and this happened and that happened. I'm like, yeah, but and then I'll go into all the things that I feel were not as good as they could have been. It's not a criticism of how he is as an artist. It's just that when you're a performer, if you don't have somebody to really give you honest feedback, it's very easy to become delusional on stage. And then your art is what suffers. You may then still get onto bigger stages and you may still do well, but the quality of your art form suffers. And I'm not trying to be critical. I love his music. I really enjoy his concerts. But it allows me to take kind of I sit a little bit away from it and I look through it with a slightly more critical eye. And he does the same for me. So sometimes I've chosen pieces that I wanted to do just because I like the emotion or I like the story of it. And he'll say, but this song and that song, it doesn't gel well on stage together. And also sometimes when I'm performing, it actually helps that my training in classical music was quite minimal, and he doesn't know that, or he didn't know that much about classical dance, because then we're really looking at it from audience perspective. Because if he doesn't understand what I'm doing on stage, or if he can't relate to something I'm doing on stage, then I know immediately that it's not working. And then it's up to me to make sure that it's changed, either the way I present it or the way it's been choreographed. Then I have to restructure it in a way that it's much more relatable to the audience.
I think both sides of it's kind of a stronger feeling if we don't like it or something doesn't work and we say that, or if it really something worked, then you know that's really truthful, and that I would say, I was going to say that it's not a complaint that she's my biggest critic. It's more of stating a fact. Yeah. It's just factual, because that's what it is. And it's a good thing, actually, at the end of the day.
You're a good man.
Yeah, no. In fact, on the subject of competition, I would say absolutely not. In fact, we're more supportive of each other. As she said, having an artist in the house, you understand. Right. So I can understand now she's traveling a lot more, but I have gone through that. I'm still going through it, so I can completely understand it. And we just try to meet somewhere in an airport or whatever we can do. But it's exactly what she said. I would see a performance sometimes and I'd say, this piece was so good, or the program was so good, but that piece did not work. And I don't know what about it didn't work, but I'll tell her that didn't work. And she'll say, okay, I had a feeling. So things like that, we actually can give each other that honest and open feedback. And I would say that, because, as she said, probably I've been performing longer and kind of going through all of those obstacles, the hurdles, the ups and downs, I sometimes tell her, don't make some of the mistakes I made, or don't do some of the things I've learned already. I've gone through it. In the dance field, it's a little different than the music field, but as much as you can, just why do you want to go through the same stupid things that I did? I can't. We're sitting in the middle of Chennai. If I start complaining about Chennai music scene and sabas, I won't have any concerts next week.
I don't want you to do.
But we all know there's so many ups and downs in any field you get into. So having gone through that, I sometimes tell her, if you navigate this way, it'll be slightly easier. Why do you want to go through the same, headaches that I went through? So I think that's probably the biggest thing, which is about the management of the career path.
Do you guys have performance anxiety ever?
Sometimes, but I think having performance anxiety at this point in my dance is only if I'm not prepared for the show. Like if I haven't, and because our schedules are all over the place, and because at least me, I'm involved in more than just my personal career, so many different projects that I have my hands in.
Such as?
We have a school in Isha called Isha Samskriti. It's called Sadguru Gurukulam Samskriti, where we have students that come to us at the age of 7 or 8, and they learn only classical art forms. So they learn classical dance, classical music, where a variety of instruments. They learn Kalaripayattu, they learn martial arts. They learn Sanskritam, and then they learn Siddha Ayurveda, they learn Tamil, and then they learn pure math. Oh. So they have 6 or 7 subjects that they do, and after about 4 years, then they drop 2 subjects, and then another 4 years, they drop 2 more subjects, so that by the time they graduate, they are only doing 2 subjects. So I help them kind of run the school, and I run the dance department. He runs the music department. And then there are a lot of other like social work that we do. So I'm very involved in a project called Kaveri Calling, which is now under the umbrella of Save Soil. And also in the ashram itself, we have about 5,000 people who live there. And so a little bit of getting involved in those activities and making sure that some things are running smoothly. I'm not in any way, before anybody misunderstands this, I'm not in any way, shape or form in control of anything there. I'm there as a volunteer and I get instructions and I fulfill those instructions.
You have to clarify that with all the media.
So you're a volunteer as well. Both
Yeah,
of
we
you are.
both volunteer. So, like as she said, she's involved in more projects than I am. I'm primarily involved in Isha Samskriti. In fact, I wanted to mention because she brought up Samskriti. You'll find one thing in common between both of us, me and Radhe, is that both of us would rather have been in the arts than in school, than in the academic school. So when I was 11, as I mentioned, I moved to India. You asked me what did everybody else think about it, but actually everybody else was fine. The question I get asked is how did you agree to it as an 11-year-old to move to India after growing up in America with your American friends and TV shows, music, etc., etc. For me, the most attractive part of moving to India and learning music for 1 year is that my parents said you don't have to go to school. This is how they convinced me to do it. And I think we should say this in an education conclave because I'm getting to it. Because even Radhe was in a similar situation. Like she said, she was just kind of all over the place and wanted to do different things. And finally, when she went to Kalakshetra, there was more routine actually. But she found that discipline, and I found the most discipline in my life and focus only with music. School was something that I just did the bare minimum to get through, get a degree, get through it, finish it, because I have to. Music was where I actually wanted to excel, where I actually wanted to become better and become as good as I could be. So I had that discipline and that focus of spending 5-6 hours a day, which is where the importance of institutions like Isha Samskriti, it's not the only one like this. There's so many schools, even Kalakshetra is another institution that focuses on the arts, but that's kind of this alternative educational approach to education rather, that I think people need to consider and value much more today. Because looking back, of course, schooling and getting a degree, I'm not saying that I regret it, but probably I could have been here a lot sooner and doing this a bit more. And I see so many students today that I feel that, okay, like you could just push yourself more into whatever you're doing. And not just always arts, it could be sports, it could be so many things that, especially the typical Indian parent, if it doesn't fall into the engineer, the medicine or the lawyer or IT, something like that, then it's always, they're very hesitant, right? They're very scared, they're very worried. Rightfully so, but sometimes there's individuals that need to be pushed in those directions and supported that way as well.
So this is not just about arts education. Like if we look at Isha Homeschool also, it's a slightly different way of teaching. They teach regular subjects. Regular means you do math and science and physics and chemistry and everything. But the thing is with children, once they get interest in a certain subject, whether it's physics or dance, their kind of enthusiasm to learn something, once they realize that I don't know and I want to know everything about this subject, if you do 1 hour of physics and then they have to wait 2 days before the next hour of physics, by then their interest in the subject is gone. But if you have a slightly more fluid structure where the minute a child shows a certain amount of interest and a certain amount of self-discipline in a particular subject, if you can give them the time and the resources to explore that subject, I mean, they go into it and they ask the most interesting questions and they actually look at the subject with a completely different perspective than any of us who have gone through maybe a slightly more formal education. And I think that's what sparks their intelligence, that's what sparks their sense of focus, that sparks their sense of discipline. They may not be disciplined about everything else, but that one thing that they like to do, it doesn't matter. I'll wake up early, I'll sleep late, I'll do whatever, but please let me do this, please let me do this. And you have to encourage that because that's learning and that's not just going to school and kind of getting through it. And that doesn't mean every child is going to be sparked by some magical subject, but if you expose them to enough things, then, I mean, any human being will find something that they're interested in.
And I think more often than not around the world, you find that, just taking a very simple example, you have a student who is more interested in, say, physics or some science or math or English, and not so interested in music or sports. The parents, the teachers, the school, they are very quick to cut out the music, cut out the other extracurriculars, and okay, that's perfectly fine, and as she said, you should support. But when it's the other way around, that a student is so into sports or music, some art form, dance, it could be anything, They don't cut out the physics and the math and the science and the English and the, all that stuff and give you more time. So if you're in a traditional school, you've got 1 hour of physics and 1 hour of math and 1 hour of English, and maybe if you're lucky, you have a 1 hour of music. But even all the arts programs are getting cut, in all of the schools around the world, unfortunately. So that gets cut first. You have 1 hour of everything. But when you have that interest, it's like they're ready to say, oh, I'll give you 2 hours of physics and cut the music. But they never say, I'll give you 2 hours of the music and cut the physics, which is sad. I wish that they start doing that also.
You want to end by doing something more for us?
I just...
Since we're very greedy people.
Sure, no problem. Probably I can
Both
just
of
sing
you?
some. I wanted to even just touch upon this, and I'll give a quick example, and we'll end with a very small, just a bit of a song. That the power of music is not just to entertain. There is, of course, an entertainment factor, but there's this emotional connection, and it can have an impact on the people listening. You kind of asked me about the impact on me when I sing and get into a certain zone. But it can also have an impact on the people that you're performing for. And as she said, that's kind of the whole thing. You connect with the people around you. And few of our friends have babies who they play my music, some of the songs, and they fall asleep only to those songs. And so when we take music, especially specifically Carnatic music, the power of the ragam, the power of the music, the melody can be so much, and it can go in all different directions. It can be soothing, it can be kind of energetic. And so I always say that, of course, there's a variety of compositions, and a variety of ragams, but even within one ragam, the same ragam, you can evoke so much different emotion in people. And so just to kind of show a quick example of that, and we can probably, yeah, go ahead.
Just before he sings very beautifully and then all of you forget that we're here to talk.
Sure.
The other aspect of this is also, especially around COVID, I think a lot of people were asking this question. So many people are ill and doctors are so important, and all of these very crucial careers are so important, and people would ask, but why art? What are you going to do with dancing? What are you going to do with singing? It's not important to us when we're in a crisis situation like this. But I think anybody who has experienced art, and it's different for different people, whether it's dance or music or poetry or painting or whatever it is, and I don't mean that you have to do it, but if you've really had an experience with art, whatever it is, the question disappears. And I think it's very important that people don't look at performance as a performance that happens and then you just go to watch it for entertainment. That if you relate to it in a very deep way, the question why art just kind of disappears, because it enriches your life in really indescribable ways.
I'll just sing one line.
Yeah.
I know we're running late, so I just wanted to show what I was talking about, the emotion. मेरा गादुरा इका महा मेरा गादुरा इका महा मेरुदीर शिकर मेरुदीर शिकर चेर राव दे मीरा चेर राव दे मीरा रामैया चेर राव दे नन्नु वीडची कदलकुरा रामैया रामा कोदंड रामा पटाभि रामा कल्याण रामा रामैया वद लकुरा रामैया वद लकुरा रामैया वद लकुरा.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
Thank you for having us.